What's going on, guys? Chip here. Welcome back to another Pokemon TCG Meta Forecast discussion video, joined today by three special players who are all going to be attending Portland Regionals. Top left, Peter Kika, then Rahul Reddy, and Daniel Altavia. So I'm going to give these guys a chance to introduce themselves, let us know their names, where they're from, a little bit of their background in the Pokemon trading card game, and we're also going to do like kind of a little icebreaker question of, going into Expanded. This is the first tournament with the newest bans, so the 4 new cards added to the ban list. So we're going to ask if everyone could either remove one of the current 7 banned cards from the ban list, bring them back into the expanded format, what would it be? Or what would be a card you would add to the ban list? So obviously the banned cards, for anyone who may not know watching, Hex Maniac, Puzzle of Time, Ghetsis, Forest of Giant Plants, Lysander's Trump card, Wally, and Archeops. So those 7 cards, would you add one or bring one back to the expanded format? Or what would be an 8th card you would add to that list? So we'll let Peter kick us off. What's up, Peter?
Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Peter. I'm from New York City. I've been playing for about 5 years, and a card. I would actually ban another card. I would
Okay.
ban Dimension Valley. Card's pretty good.
Yeah.
Don't want to see too many of these cheesy spread decks going on.
Sure. All right, Rahul.
Hi, I'm Rahul. I'm from the Orlando, Florida area. I was going to say D-Valley, but Kika stole that from me. So, I still think Execute should be gone, just because being able to have no cost to do a certain action like Ultra Ball or like Comp Search or something like that just seems ridiculous to me still.
Sure. All right, and Danny, round us out.
For me, I'm kind of comfortable with the bans. I guess if there was anything that I would have to like go out of my way to ban, I would probably pick Garbodor from Breakpoint, just because I want to see how I guess you would also have to do Garbodor from Dragons Exalted, but
Plasma Freeze, right?
Or it's, there's the
that was
secret rare
the
plasma freeze. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
yeah.
Secret, right?
But I would just want to see how a format would go when you let a bunch of decks just use like these crazy abilities and just go off on each other, like a really fast-paced, crazy format.
Sure. Something to just not keep any abilities in check, just kind of let it run rampant. I like it. Well, cool. So we're going to be running through the expanded format for everyone, for anyone heading to Portland this weekend. Black and White through Celestial Storm. And yeah, we're going to talk about a lot of different expanded decks. There's been no major tournaments in this format. There's been some like League Cups, some content online like article sites and, YouTube videos and Twitch streams and things like that. But other than that, we really kind of are going into this format a little blind. So the big thing, obviously is going to be the 4 new cards added to the ban list. And so real quick, we can just kind of run through what are some things that, like, what are the general changes you expect to see from the format just based on these bans? So we can start with Peter on that one.
I expect the biggest change to happen is that Zorg's not going to be at the top of the triangle anymore. Losing pretty much Puzzle, Hex, and Ghetsis from doing its whole degenerate combo of like red card, Hexer, Ghetsis you, and KO you the same turn and draw a bunch of cards. It's just like really degenerate. So it's going to be at least a little bit refreshing that that's gone. Other than that, there's some decks that took hits as well, like decks that use Puzzle primarily, like Sable Garb and Night March.
Yeah.
And also, I think we forgot to mention this, but Wally was also banned, so Trevenant can't just go cheese you turn 1 with Wally. So they always also give you a turn of items.
Sure. Danny, any thoughts? What were your initial thoughts after the bans with where the format's headed?
So my initial thoughts after the bans, I was pretty sure that like fast-paced decks would still be the best kind of deck, especially with the 2 like real, oppressive cards in expanded getting banned. But that you'd have to be able to control your resources Somehow. So like maybe draw like Acrobike or something's not reliable, or you would need to have a good way to get resources back. So I think decks that are like naturally capable of doing those are going to be really strong. And then another thing that like caught me off guard was the Wally ban. Like it makes sense because you don't want Trev to be overpowered, but at the same time, I don't know if Trev even would necessarily be overpowered.
Sure.
So yeah.
All right, and Rahul.
Pretty much same thing. Like Zork's not going to be the deck to beat anymore. Like, and like Wally, same thing. Like the two guys said, like means that, that we won't have Trev being like turn one. You get a turn of items no matter what now, and I think like D Valley is like the only thing that that would have made like sense to round out everything, but like. I think like spread decks are going to be really good now, and
okay. I think we might have had Rahul cut out
beyond
there.
that, I don't know what else.
He's trying to stay back in it, but I think Rahul might have cut out there for a second. But we'll hopefully get him back here in just a sec. But we'll just keep it moving. So the way I kind of want to do this, okay, I think Rahul, you back?
I think I'm back. Sorry,
No,
I
you're
think my
good.
internet dropped real fast.
Yeah. No worries.
Basically, TLDR, what everyone said already.
Yeah.
And then just I thought spread would be really good because of D Valley and the Psychic Lele.
Sure.
Off the bat.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see what the format looks like with the Psychic Lele now in format with Dimension Valley. So we'll kind of see what happens from that. But yeah, so the way I kind of want to run this, so there's so many viable decks in Expanded. Like, I think when we think about the different decks that are out there, like, we could easily see, like, there are like 20 different decks that we could go through that I wouldn't be surprised if like any of the decks off this list of 20 would, you know, potentially make day 2 of this tournament, right? There's just like so many different things out there. Yeah. So what we're going to kind of do is we'll talk about the big ones as a group, but when we kind of wind it down to the more rogue, more niche things, I'm just going to kind of bounce it off of one person, let them kind of give their thoughts, and we'll kind of move on, just in order to keep the video at a reasonable length. Because if we talk about, you know, 20 different decks, all 4 of us, it'll, you know, go on pretty long. So does that sound good to everyone?
Yeah.
Cool. So, first one, I'm actually going to be basing this a lot off of a poll that was done in Hey Fonte, the Facebook group, recently about the expanded metagame, about what people were thinking. The most popular decks were going to be heading into Portland, and the resounding #1 favorite on the top of the list was Buzzrock, the deck that won the last expanded regionals. It seems like the deck that lost the least to the bans. If anything, it gained more since, you know, it like some of its like harder matchups got better or something like that. So we'll actually start off with Rahul on this one. Rahul, I know you were one of the first people to kind of popularize Buzzrock and Expanded at Utah last year, and then, you know, we saw from that, you know, the baby Buzz version that James Arnold played at Virginia, and then Xander ended up winning Virginia with a Buzzrock list. So Rahul, why don't you start us off? Where does Buzzrock sit currently headed into Portland?
I think it's really strong still. I think more of like a fighting toolbox deck as opposed to like a Buzzrock deck would be better.
Okay.
But I think like I'm gonna lump them both together and just say like fighting is like an archetype in those two is really strong.
Sure. I think we may have lost him again, but Peter. Oh wait, maybe.
I will fucking go.
Okay, I'm just going to kick it over. Peter, if you want to give your thoughts on Buzzrock, we'll see if maybe we can get Rahul back in here in a sec.
Yeah, I mean, the result of the poll with having Buzzrock at the top of the most popular list seems pretty fair guess because it won the last expanded regionals. It didn't lose anything from the ban list. Oh, Rahul's back.
Rahul's still going, man. Just take it away, man. You're good.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a really good deck. It's just really powerful. I think its Zorg matchup is finally favorable, just because Zorg doesn't have puzzles, so it can't recycle the Mewtwo combo multiple times.
Sure. All right, Danny, what are your thoughts on Buzzrock?
So I think Buzzrock is good, but I think that people.
And Rahul's back.
I think Buzzrock's good, but I think people are gonna play like Trev. Are probably thinking that Trev's the best deck because Zoric got nerfed, so Trev's like up there. I think people are gonna probably beat the Buzzwoles with Trev more than likely
Okay.
a lot of the time. And then I think that Baby Buzz Shrine Garb is a deck that translates really well from standard to expanded, and I think that deck throws Buzzrock for a loop. So you could probably see that deck doing better than Buzzrock and probably kind of pushing Buzzrock into the background as like the easy fighting deck that picks up wins against Zork and takes the L to Trev, but pretty much has good matchups against everything else. So
Sure. Okay, moving on. Number 2 on that list was Drampa Garbodor. So we'll start off with Danny on this one. Danny got top 16 at Virginia with Drampa Garb. So one of the things I want to ask with this deck specifically, when we're talking about Drampa Garbodor, do you think we're going to see more people favor the what we've seen of recent, the parallel cities, the more emphasis on disruption, with Sudowoodo and things like that, the things to combat Zoroark, or you think we might see people kind of kick it back to what we saw at the beginning of last season in Fort Wayne and in Daytona with Necrozma, Dimension Valleys, especially utilizing maybe that new Tapu Lele promo. Which of the two Garbodor variants do you think we're going to see more of, and how do they both sit currently? Danny, if you want to start us off.
I think Drampagarb is better than Dimension Valley Garb in this meta. Okay. And that's only because I think the popularity of DCE isn't really waning as much as you would expect. And Drampagarb mixing N, Garbatoxin, parallel for some matchups, and then special energy removal is really good against probably a good like 2/3 of the expanded meta. And then there's matchups, every other matchup it just comes down to the whole Garbatoxin N like core. Mm-hmm. So I think that deck really has it all. There's not much else you really need to ask for. But if the Dimension Valley version utilizes Drampa in a similar way, but kind of changes up its aggression elsewhere, I could see that one potentially doing better.
Yeah, I think like if I remember correctly, the list that Ryan Sablehouse won Daytona with, like it played a Drampa, but it also had the Mew from Fates Collide, which can let you use Righteous Edge for free if you have the Drampa on your bench with Dimension Valley in play. So you definitely still have that option available to you, but I think it was just like the single copy of Drampa, whereas like Drampa Garb obviously has a heavier emphasis, with multiple copies and really using Righteous Edge with the beefy 180 HP attacker as opposed to just the little 50 HP Mew, I guess. Rahul, I know you played Necrozma Garb in Daytona last year, I believe. Mm-hmm. So what are your opinions on the two and where they both sit right now in the meta?
I think I'm going to flip from Danny, and I'm going to think the other way is more going to be better, because when we had not Zork to worry about, we had more of like a control meta, and that deck, while it was very boring to play, was like had a answer to everything, hypothetically. So it was able to deal with whatever the metagame had to throw at it, and I don't think the metagame has anything that's crazier to offer now. I think your matchup against like Buzzrock, which is like the newest deck, I guess, on the block, is better because you have Tool Drop Trubbish to just blow them up. But I don't think your matchup's got any worse.
Well, I mean, I think one of the reasons we saw that version of the deck fall off was because Zork GX came out and was so good and expanded. With the bans to Zork, does Necrozma Garb have what it needs to deal with Zork still? Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. I think like you can still play like a one count of parallel, maybe like, and I think if the Zork player plays it poorly, you still have Black Ray into just cleaning up. So sure. And expanded, they still have to play a ton of items. Like I don't think like Garb gets any worse in that deck. Yeah. So I don't think you need to focus on energy removal. I think you can play more aggressively in general with that deck.
And Peter, thoughts on the Garbodor decks?
I think they're both pretty good. I'm leaning more towards the Dimension Valley version just because it has way more options. The Drampa Garb that Igor and them played last season was primarily built to counter Zoroark because it
Mhm.
played like 3 to 4 copies of Parallel City. So it was trying to do the whole combo where you Parallel City and Garbotoxin and Righteous Edge the Zoroark at the same time to control all their resources. So with Zoroark having way fewer resources, they can't really disrupt Chizu now. So I think the Necrozma D Valley version is probably better.
Sure. All right, and one of the decks that obviously got hit pretty hard by the expanded bans, it seems, being Trevenant, was pretty high up on this list. You know, losing turn one Wally seems like it would be pretty bad for the deck, but it still seems like it's a deck people think is going to be very good in this format. You know, does the Wally loss really hurt the deck that much? What are your guys' thoughts, Peter? If you actually want to start us off on this one.
I think it hurts way more than people think.
Okay.
Trevenant wasn't a very good deck, even with Wally. It relied on going first and cheesing you. So now that every single deck gets a turn, I think even Buzzrock is favored versus them. Like back in Virginia Regionals, I remember talking to a few people playing Buzzrock, and they're like, "Yeah, if I go first and get a couple elixirs or something, get a few energy, like Trevenant's still like a stage 2 deck, and they
Mm-hmm.
need a stadium, and they need attachments. They need to keep evolving. They need to disrupt your energy. Like the deck has way too many things trying to do just to spread 30 damage. Where you can just play a spread deck, just play Tapu Koko, Necrozma, D Valley. You know, forget about item locking. It's way more consistent, and I think you'll get more wins that way.
Danny, thoughts on Trevenant?
I mean, I pretty much agree with Peter. I think Trevenant's one of those decks with like, it kind of like stumbles, trying to accomplish so many things at once, and decks really aren't built, uh, with like as little consistency as Trev has, and with as big of a laundry list as Trev. So I think it kind of like is one of those decks that is its biggest enemy, and I don't think Trev will ever be like necessarily a top play or something in expanded because of how inconsistent it is. Even if it does get some finishes because the gimmick does work when it works, it's pretty underwhelming. And even if it does see play, it might not get a giant finish.
And Rahul.
I agree with both. I've never liked Trev as a deck, and I always thought it only won games because it went first. And now you can't even win the game going first. So
All right. Right after the expanded bans were announced, I think one of the first decks that a lot of people thought had potential, at least in this format, was Archie's Blastoise. I think a deck that has really just been unplayable the past year and a half to 2 years, with so many decks just playing Hexmaniac and Ghetsis. Like, both of those cards just destroy the Archie's Blastoise strategy. But since both of those cards are gone, it seems like there is a chance for Blastoise to have success again in expanded. So, Danny, what are your thoughts on Archie's Blastoise? Where does it sit right now heading into Portland?
So I mean, I'm actually writing an article on Archie's right now. I think it's a really good deck. It's definitely what I'm currently testing for Portland, and I think that with a good enough 60, it's capable of potentially beating everything. Its biggest hurdle is all the garb that you see in expanded, but uh, I think that I've been able to turn the guard matchup a little more into Archie's favor, so it might be even at like a 50-50 now, maybe 55-45 in Garb's favor. So I mean, I think the deck's pretty good. It's pretty much a water toolbox deck that never runs out of energies. Similarly, to how Malamar is doing the same thing right now in Standard. So it's kind of comparable to that. And it just has so many different attacks in its arsenal, so it can deal with so many different strategies, and that's like that just makes for a really good deck, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. Rahul, thoughts on Blastoise?
I think it's good. Now that Gets is in a card, you can actually have a chance to set up, and I think every time you set up, it was a really strong deck. I mean, we watched Jacob Van Wagner win Worlds with it, and like the games he won weren't close. Like he just ran people over, and like I like the version that Danny's talking about too, with like you can play a lot of one prizers and like heavy Articuno or something like that to deal with other one prize decks and just take swing the prize trade in your favor. So it's just like a deck that seems cool. It just, if you can make the Garb matchup at least 50-50, it's probably a good play. But otherwise, like, Garb is like the biggest scare. But I mean, we don't know what people are going to play this weekend, and realistically.
Sure. And Peter, round us out on Archie's Blastoise.
Yeah, Archie's is at the very least playable because Hacks and Getsus just ruined that deck turn one. You got hit with either of those supporters, you just couldn't get Blastoise out. So I expect people to play it. It's a very fun deck to play. I feel like people like being able to Maxis and Archie stuff out and just like get a bunch of energies. People might like want to go back to the Blastoise days, play some Keldeo. So I expect it to do at least decent. I don't know if it can win the event because Garbodor is like pretty big in my eyes. Like in order to win the event, I feel like you have to beat Garbodor. So if there's a list that can do that, then it can win.
Sure. All right, we'll move on from there. A deck that I actually wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about. Danny already kind of hinted at this one earlier, and that is Baby Buzzwole, Garbodor, Shrine of Punishments, like single prize attackers. We've seen it be very good in Standard starting off this season. We saw it do really well at Worlds this year. I think kind of the surprise deck coming in to Worlds was the Baby Buzz Garb deck, and performed pretty well in day one and also in day two. So I feel like that's an archetype that hasn't been as explored in Expanded. We don't have any past tournaments with it for sure. Like the closest thing would be Worlds, and that was just one tournament. So I'm sure there's lists weren't even necessarily totally refined at Worlds for this deck. So where do we think a deck like that could sit in Expanded? Do you think that this is a deck that has potential? Actually, looking at the poll right now, I see Peter actually voted for the deck. So Peter, why don't you start us off? What are your thoughts on Baby Buzz Garb Shrine?
I actually voted for the deck as a joke because I don't think it's very good at Expanded.
Okay.
I think it's like bottom tier single prize decks. I think it has a very bad Night March matchup. I don't know how you beat Night March with that deck. Like any other deck that has single prize attackers is just going to outtrade you. Like you having the 1 energy per turn with like a damage cap isn't that good. But the thing about Expanded is people just like let loose with like, and not the Marshadow let loose, they just like play random stuff.
Sure.
They just like play all their EXs, GXs, Shaman. So, I mean, it could be really good, but I just don't see it at the moment.
Rahul, what are your thoughts on Baby Buzz Garb Shrine?
Same as Peter. Like, you can make day two with it, I think. And like you can prey off of bad players, but the moment you hit someone who knows what they're doing, the 1 energy attachment per turn on your Buzzwoles is just going to hinder you because their damage output is not that high. Sure, you get Muscle Band, which is a really good card to deal with single prize attackers, but like the choice band math also is very relevant in a lot of situations. So it's like you're trading off, and by playing Shrine also you're not as consistent as you otherwise normally would be. So I don't know. I don't think the deck is very good, but I think we could see one surprise us and go like maybe top 16.
Okay. Danny, round it out.
I mean, I kind of disagree. I think the deck's pretty strong. I think pairing Baby Buzz and Strong Energy and DNC with, maybe not with Shrine. I don't really like Shrine in the deck in Expanded because it's more bumpable in Expanded than it was in Standard like a couple months ago. So definitely Shrine has diminished in value, but the deck overall remains really strong. Baby Buzz is a good poker. Garb is a good finisher. Maybe if you run a Garbotoxin in there, that's good. Regirock was always good. And then you have access to VS Seeker, which is really good. You have access to Karina. Like, there are different little tricks that the deck can run that just make it better. And I think with a good 60, the deck could honestly, I don't know if it could win an Expanded event. It really depends on how strong Trev's presence is, and maybe a specific like lock decks like Sylveon or Sableye Garb or something. But I could see it definitely having a strong finish.
Yeah, if I could just add something,
Sure.
I feel like the deck has to look drastically different than it did at Worlds for it to be successful and Expanded. So, like Danny said, you might have to play like Karina and like other weird cards that just weren't available in the Worlds meta. So like pre-XY, pre-Sun and Moon stuff. So you're going into the XY Black and White era.
Sure.
Maybe like Laserbank. Maybe Laserbank is good in the deck. I don't know.
Honestly, that helps with some of those like damage output numbers you were kind of talking about. Like,
yeah,
it's harder to play around just a 30 damage attack whenever it's getting racked up by strong energy, Deancey, plus 30 every turn from poison, and you might get left asleep as well. So all right, we will continue on from there. Next one on the list that I wanted to talk about is Night March. So we saw, I believe Night March got top 16 in Roanoke, and it's a deck that's like always kind of been around and expanded. It won the first expanded event last year, then it won in San Jose later on in the year, but after that we didn't really see quite as much from it rounding out the rest of the season. So we'll start things off with our resident Night March expert, Peter, if you want to kind of give us your thoughts of where Night March currently sits. I know all three of you guys have played it at tournaments before, so you guys all, I'm sure, have opinions on the deck. But Peter, where do you think it sits right now?
I mean, the loss of puzzle is like pretty huge for the deck, so you already had to manage your resources pretty well to be successful with it. And I think for the last few years at least, Night March has only performed as well as the people playing it. So you haven't really seen many like unknown players or like non-high ranking players do well with it, because it's more fair than it used to be. So like you actually need to work harder with Night March than other decks to get your wins. But I, I'm not feeling it right now personally. I just feel like people could just throw in a Karen and I lose, and I'm not trying to do that.
Yeah, without puzzle, it's definitely a lot harder to come back from a Karen for sure. Danny, what are your thoughts on Night March?
I mean, I agree that coming back from Karen's really hard. People are trying to run like the melodic that gets any card out of your discard pile to make up for that, but I don't think it's enough. And I mean, I think Zork makes the deck's matchup against Buzzrock like plummet, and I think it also makes the Buzzgarb Shrine matchup plummet. And I don't think the deck ever even beats Trev, like no matter what. So it probably dies just because of the puzzle ban, because of the hex ban. It was a deck that was so good because it gave up one prize and locked your opponent out from doing anything except killing your active a lot of the time. So that you were trading like 2 for 1 while potentially making them whiff attacks, and it kind of lost that. So now it's just a vanilla one prizer deck, and there are just better ways to go about it that don't have like blatant counters like Kieran and Oricorio.
Sure. All right, Rahul, round us out with Night March. And while we're on Night March, I'll actually go ahead and give you a chance to talk about Vespiquen as well.
Perfect.
Similar style decks, but I'm sure you have more to say about Vespiquen than either of these guys combined. So you can you just let us know thoughts on both those decks.
Okay, so for Night March, I agree with Kiko a lot, where it's like the deck is a lot more fair than like the States format, where we didn't have any like disruption. Now with a lot of disruption and like all these tools, it was a lot harder, not like, I guess, harder to play, but harder to play successfully last format, like the small nuances. And then once Zor came out with its very oppressive, like, red card, gets his hex, like, chain combos, like, Night March just kind of phased out of the format. Like, it's very interesting to see that, like, the San Jose, like, format up till, like, Utah was pretty much the same. Like, nothing really changed, but, like, different decks continued to perform because the format was so big. Like, none of the new cards impacted anything that big.
Yeah.
So I don't think Night March, I don't think any like good player is going to pick up Night March confidently and be like, my opponents aren't playing Karen, I'll be okay. Because it'd just be stupid to assume that, because there's a lot of people who will play Karen for the sake of playing Karen, playing Oricorio for the sake of playing it, even though it might not be needed anymore. And that being said, I think Vespiquen's better because it can bounce back from Karen and Oricorio better, depending on if you're playing Zork. And I think Vespiquen is a deck where playing Zork doesn't hurt you as much, your Buzzrock matchup, as much as it does Night March, because Night March gives up one prizers much quicker to Buzzrock, whereas Vespiquen can kind of just OHKO and make very good trades, and you have the weakness on Lycanroc, which is very like helpful instead of extending really far. And if you play something like Blacksmith and throw it back to like, type changing Flareon or something like that, you can actually have an answer to the walls like Aegislash, Xurkitree that may be popping up in decks. You have really good typing with Flareon, Vespiquen, including the Zoroark as well. It's just the Trevenant matchup isn't great even with the Zoroark, so you have to just kind of hope you don't hit too many Oricorio/Karens and, I don't know, draw better, because Night March you can pop off faster and better, but Vespiquen you kind of have to take the turn to set up and kind of get there.
Cool. Peter, Danny, either of you guys have anything you want to add about Vespiquen? Feel free. If not,
I just don't like that it needs to evolve.
Okay. All right.
90 HP is nice, but getting a turn is bad.
Sure. Okay, moving forward. Next up on the list, we've got a couple of different Zoroark decks. Zoroark Lycanroc, Zoroark Garbodor, Zoroark Muck, like all these different versions we saw perform decently and expanded, I guess except Zoroark Garbodor, but I think now Garbodor provides that spot for Zoroark maybe where it lost the disruption that it had previously with Hexmaniac and Red Card and things. Of those three Zoroark decks, I guess like of any Zoroark deck in general, which one do you guys think has the chance to perform the best? And what are your kind of opinions on where the Zoroark decks sit currently in the meta? Rahul, if you want to kick us off with this one.
I think straight Zoroark decks you can't touch. I think it's just like way too risky unless you're playing Muck. I think Zoroark Muck has a chance to actually deal with the field because you can answer Sudowoodo, but you're not as oppressive as it used to be with all the, gets this yada yada hex every turn. I think Zoroark Lycanroc is probably the best shot going in because I think it has really good typing. I think Lycanroc has always been like a very, very good card. Like its GX attack can pretty much just read, I'm going to take 2 prizes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Zoroark Lycanroc is probably the front runner of all the Zoroark decks in my opinion.
Danny, thoughts on the Zoroark decks?
I mean, I think Zorig's is still really good. There's nothing wrong with Blockade. Blockade's really good. Having that option is always great. Being able to run like basically you were told like, oh, you have to cut your 2 hexes and your Getsis, but now you can just replace it with Garbs. So like that's fine. I'll just put in my Garbs and I'm still hitting for 210 consistently every turn and drawing pretty much whatever I want. So the deck like fundamentally didn't really change. The only thing that changed is that you can't Garb on turn 1 and Garb doesn't stick like Hex does because your opponent has the option to Field Blower. So if anything, they made Zoroark more fair, and if anything, it's just kind of getting the Night March treatment where it was like pretty much the BDIF and every deck was like severely teched to beat it, and now like the techs are the puzzles got banned, so now techs are seeing less play. There's still a Sudowoodo in every deck, but that might be as far as it goes. And then Zoroark's gonna do as well as the people who play it, and then from there we'll see where it goes.
All right, Peter, thoughts on Zoroark?
I'm not too sure which one is the best version, but I still feel like it's going to be a pretty good deck. I don't know if the 3 slots go directly to Garb because like you do need like extra tools, like you need more Floodstones and stuff. So I mean you kind of just
you lost your puzzles, so there's some spots right there.
Yeah, there's spots at the puzzle, so you might be able to make it work with just a Garb line.
Cool deal. Okay, moving forward, I feel like that's kind of what I say every single time we move to a new deck, but a deck I think we haven't really seen perform at all in Expanded because we haven't had any Expanded tournaments with it, is Rayquaza GX. So obviously been a force in Standard, was a force at Worlds. Even in Standard losing Max Elixir currently, it's still been very good, very popular. Going back over to Expanded, do you think we'll see, basically all Rayquaza GX decks switch back to what we saw at Worlds with Max Elixirs and things like that? Or, what other potential tools are there out there for Rayquaza GX in the Expanded format? Danny, you want to start us off with Rayquaza?
I mean, I messed with Rayquaza for like a minute, but it's a good 2-prizer deck, but 2-prizer decks aren't really insane and Expanded right now unless they have like an insane amount of HP, like 200 plus HP, so that they don't easily get KO'd or they have some way to like combat whatever it is that's trying to KO them. I think Ray's really good if you throw in the Ho-Oh, maybe play a Scramble Switch and you can like just have plays where you set up a Ray and you're always like rebirthing and getting 2 energies on the board. And I think Ray is better than it was in Standard as far as like the standalone deck, but I think it's also worse in its respective format than it
Okay.
was in standard,
Sure.
because there's just more things that beat it, and Trashalanche is, if anything, even more consistent with teammates, so it probably stands like zero chance against Trashalanche now.
Yeah. Peter, I know you played Rayquaza at Worlds. Where do you think it sits currently in Expanded?
Well, Danny just gave me some ideas with this Ho-Oh. I totally forgot Rebirth was a thing. I don't know. It seems pretty good now. You just rebirth every turn, dude. I don't get it. Oh, Danny, why'd you do this? I don't know. I don't know. It seems pretty good. If you have answers to the Garb decks, I mean, at Worlds, literally my only losses were Garb decks. So if you can somehow beat them, then it's a really good deck. But I just don't see beating them with like a Turbo Ray version. You would have to play like perhaps Eels and just try to Dynamortar to get there. Play some non-GXs, maybe Raikou or two or something.
Okay. Interesting. That sounds spicy. Rahul, what are your thoughts on Rayquaza?
I actually was about to say that I really like the Eels version with like you're not like super Turbo Ray, like you've got a couple rays just to like, get in there and do what they got to do, like maybe 3 rays, not 4, but you got a bunch of 1 prize attackers where you're just playing like old school single prize Eels, but you have the ray to get in there and just do big damage when you need it. Like he's a big bruiser that the deck needs to deal with things. But you maybe play like a Shining Lugia, maybe like a Raikou, just to kind of like get in there and take the 1 prizes when they need to take 1 prizes, and like they're both really big and resilient, so they don't die immediately, and like you can just get a bunch of energy on board if you need to, like very quickly with Dynamotor.
So it's interesting you guys have all kind of brought this up, the Eels combo. So what, like, I know Ray Eels of old was a meta deck back in like 2013 with the Rayquaza EX, but that's a card that's still around and expanded. What's out there to stop that from doing well? Like what's the difference between the two? Why would you play Rayquaza GX maybe over Rayquaza EX?
1 discards. It's like I guess the only
Sure.
thing I've got.
Yeah, I don't know. What do you guys, Danny, Peter? What do you think of
I mean,
the Eels decks or whatever?
I think Ray Eels is cool and all, but Ray Eels is a deck that discards your energies. So it's kind of like the same as saying like, what's the difference between Vickeray and Bulu?
Or Ultra Necrozma.
And
Oh
Red
yeah,
White Malamar,
or
sure.
It's like literally the same deck, yeah.
Yeah, it's the same idea. So, you're gonna have one deck that's consistent, and maybe a Ray dies, or maybe a Garb comes down, and your damage output is still there. And maybe that's the way to go about it, because maybe you play less items, or maybe Rough Seas helps in certain situations. But I think that Ray GX is still the better card over Ray EX, and I mean, the big, like, if for no other reason, it would have to be for Tempest GX, because you have a Pokemon that says, whenever you start me, you can potentially save yourself from a dead hand. So I mean, that's pretty powerful. Plus, just the synergy between Stormy Winds and like VS Seeker. Like maybe you have a dead hand, you Stormy Winds, discard a supporter, and now your VS Seeker is active. So like the Ray GX has more consistency options that aren't present with the Ray EX.
Sure. Yeah, and I guess Peter brought up a good point that Ultra Necrozma Malamar exists, and that's literally the same thing as Rayquaza EX Eels, except it's better because it has more HP and does more damage. So I guess there's really no reason ever to play it. But yeah, we'll continue on from there, kind of in this same vein of discussion. Another like just set of decks I think that gained so much in the format with Hex Maniac being banned are these Dynamotor-esque decks. So Dynamotor on Electric, Metal Lynx on Bronzong, and a Psychic Recharge on Malamar. All 3 of these I think were unplayable or like really difficult for them to do well pre the bans, but then after the bans, Hex Maniac's gone. These all have a chance. So I don't know. What do you guys think about those? The Stage 1 Evolve, Dynamotor-esque decks. Where do they all sit? I know Frank Piersick did well at Roanoke with an Ultra Necrozma deck with like Giratina EX and Double Dragon Energy. So I don't know. It's kind of like a big pool of potential partners for these different cards. I don't know. What do you guys think? Rahul, do you want to start us off?
Sure. I actually really like the Dynamotor-esque decks because Metal has a lot of actually really cool tools. Bronzong Break is really good. I think Dialga is really good. I think Dialga is one of the best GX attacks in the game. Aegislash I think is very strong because DC is still as strong as ever. And if without Hex, decks need to play like a Silent Lab or actual basic energies to deal with it. And if they say, I don't want to deal with it and just move on, you can just throw up that Aegislash and the game could be over. So I think Metal's really good in that archetype. Like I mentioned, Eels, like you can do things with Eels. And then Malamar's, Malamar's always going to be good. Because Frank did well with it back in the day. And now there's no Hex, and Buzzwole is still going to be a very important deck to deal with. So you could, have an answer to that too.
Okay, Danny, thoughts?
I mean, a lot of abilities are buffed now that Hex is gone. So, I mean, the first deck I tried at a League Cup recently for Expanded was Gascan. I think that Gascan and Expanded could be really good. You have room for everything that you would pretty much want in Standard, but you can drop the Chime because you don't really need it in favor of like blowers and stuff. So I mean that's pretty good. I think the biggest thing that all of these decks have an issue with is Parallel City, and I think that Malamar's success in Standard should not give anyone like false hope that something like that can work in Expanded. It definitely could be good, but as long as Parallel's around, you really you have to make sure that that you're confident in what you're benching and that you're able to draw well enough to not have any dead bench spots ever. And it's really tough in Expanded compared to Standard. So I could see the decks doing well, but I could also see them fumbling just like they did in the past.
All right, Peter, thoughts on the Dynamotor decks?
I think they're really decent, at least the Psychic and Lightning ones. I'm not really too sure if Bronzong is that great. I think the best thing that they bring to the format for Expanded is giving decks like Wailord and Sylveon just a very hard time. Because I don't think they can beat these Energy Excel from the discard decks. So, more Energy Excel, less Wailord.
I guess that's a pretty good segue into the next one we can talk about. Deck Wailord did get second place in Virginia. So I don't know. What do you guys think? I think Ghetsis being gone from the Zoroark decks is a big plus for Wailord. I don't know. Do you think Wales could come in and have success this coming weekend in Portland, or is it a deck that maybe it's had its one chance to do well and Expanded and it came just short? Danny, you want to start us off?
I mean, Wailord just got like second at the last Expanded event. So, I mean, there's no counting out Wailord as a deck, apparently. I think Wailord specifically is the only deck that has a chance to, or the only lock deck that has a chance to just straight up auto win games based on your opponent's prizes, because, like, Sableye Garb can lose just to an attacker. Sylveon can lose to, a quick onslaught of attacks. But Wailord is just kind of impervious to these things because it has its 250 HP. You could fix that with Fighting Fury Belt. So, I mean, it's not a bad deck. Some issues it might have are I think the Trev matchup might actually be kind of bad if you're not running Rough Seas, so you want to make sure to at least include a copy of that. You might have issues with Garb, like Garbage Collection, Trubbish, and then if people include Guru in their list, because a lot of Zoroark players might just throw in a Guru immediately because of how well Wailord just did. So, there are some issues that the deck might face, but overall it's a pretty strong archetype.
Peter, thoughts on Wales?
I actually disagree with the Trev matchup. I've played Wales back in Massachusetts regionals like 3 years ago, just as a meme back when the World's Invite was 300 points. I had 300, so it was just like whatever. Turns out I should have played Nightmarch at that event, but I played Wales. I played against my friend Tristan round 1 playing Trevenant, and he went with one Trevenant and literally just evolved it twice and just started attacking, and I lost. So I think with the addition of Lusamine now in the format, you can just get infinite Flare Grunts and you just run Trev out of energies. There's no way they're gonna. You just stagger your whales. There's no way they're gonna do like 1,000 damage to kill all your whales. But in general, I think Wailords. I mean, I welcome the whales. Come bring the whales. I think I can beat them. So it's never going to be like a really popular deck because not many people own multiple copies of Tropical Beach, and playing without Tropical Beach is just like very suboptimal. So it's never going to be super popular. I don't know what the statistics are of like playing a counter like Bunnelby or Oranguru to try to beat it, but um, we'll see. They show up once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they do well, sometimes they don't.
Yeah. Rahul, thoughts on the Wailord decks?
I actually brought this up like 2 days ago when I was talking to Peter. I was like, I really like Wailord. You know, there's no Getsis anymore. You're going to be really good. And he's like, everything plays basic energy now, bro. And I'm like, oh, yeah. Like, you just lose the stage 1 Dynamotor type decks. Ooh, puppy. You like,
She was
you lose
scratching
like
at the door, so she had to get let in. Sorry, go ahead.
you like lose to like a lot of like the random decks to play like basic energy now. And I think like playing an Oranguru or like a Bunnelby now like doesn't seem bad in a lot of decks. Like, I was building decks and I was like, like a Bunnelby wouldn't be a bad inclusion in this deck. Like, you can be an aggressive miller, or you can just like have this to throw back stuff now that you don't have puzzle anymore. Like, it doesn't hurt to include a good recovery card like that. So I don't know. I think Wailord like can still win on a lot of matchups, but at the same time, like I think players who's like have been playing Wailord for like a long time and have the access to beaches will probably play Wailord. Like, we saw Alex Szymanski play it like for like 3 straight tournaments. So I don't know.
Okay. Moving on from there, I guess kind of in just the same vein, we can talk about some of the other, disruption, stall, mill decks that are, out there in Expanded. One of them being Sableye Garbodor. It seems like Sableye lost a lot, losing Puzzle of Time. Obviously, like, Puzzle was such a huge piece for that deck. But at the same time, Getsis was banned, which was a problem for the deck, I think, historically. So I don't know, where does Sableye sit? Like, is it still okay without Puzzle of Time? I mean, it did win Utah Regionals, so like it's done well and expanded semi recently. I don't know. What do you guys think? Peter, you want to kick us off with Sableye?
I don't know. I'm never like a real big fan of these mill decks, but Getsis was a huge problem. So I'm hoping it's not a good deck because I don't want to deal with Sableye Garb. I don't know. Puzzle just gave it such flexibility and just like really degenerate combos with the Life Dew. So I don't think it's going to be like the most dominant deck in the format, but I could see it being like tier 2.
Okay. Danny?
So I think Sableye is pretty good. Losing puzzle obviously hurts because you can't just grab 2 puzzles and react to your opponent's turn perfectly now. You have to have some amount of foresight or just be controlling their top deck well enough to make the best conscious decision. I think Sableye is still really good because the thing that doesn't change about it is how like guaranteed the lock is once it happens, because trick shoveling and looking at your opponent's top deck, now having the option for hiker supporter to pretty much seal the deal when you're trying to lock your opponent's deck. Like if you ever catch your opponent with a bad end and remove their energy and then hit them with a hiker, you can just grab trick shovel VS Seeker for every turn for the rest of the game and lock your opponent completely out of the game. So I think the deck has the tools it needs to succeed, and Puzzle may have made it even better. And without Puzzle, it's a bit more human, but I think it's still extremely good, and it's not unplayable now that it lost Puzzle.
Yeah, Hiker, that's not even a card I really thought about, but it seems very, very good in these type of lock decks where you can just put any card from the top 5 on top, and there's a pretty good chance that in 5 cards there's going to be a bad card there. So yeah, seems solid. Rahul, close us out on Sable Garb.
I don't like it, never have. I think him winning, I think Caleb played very well to win Utah, but I think he also got very lucky. I think there should have been multiple times where he would have been stopped by players. Like, the only reason I think he beat Travis is because Travis opened two retreat one like the guys who tour retreat like 2 of the games, and like you just can't do anything about that. But a lot of decks like are kind of like they know about that, and they don't really. Everyone knows how to play against Sableye now. It's like a known quantity, and without puzzles, I don't think a Sableye player can kind of just go on autopilot anymore and just go like junk on puzzle every turn, and just have the options. You have to know. You have to be able to predict now. And if your opponent like knows the 2 cards you took, it makes that a lot harder to like utilize them to their full efficiency, because your opponent's like, oh, you took Trick Shovel and Crushing Hammer, so I can do this instead, or like, oh, they took an Enhanced Hammer, so I'm going to attach Basic Energy instead. It just makes things weird. I think Sableye getting off the perfect lock is a lot harder than it used to be, but it's not like unplayable by any means. I still put it like tier 2.5, maybe 3.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, we are closing in on about 50 minutes so far, so to speed things up a little bit, there's a few more decks I do want to hit on, but we'll just kind of I'll kick it to one person to talk about a deck, and then if either of the other two has something they want to add, feel free, but if not, we can just kind of keep it moving from there. We're getting kind of into the more rogue-ish territory from here. So I guess just kind of continuing with the disruption decks, I guess the last one to kind of close it out would be Sylveon. Got 2 top 32 placements at Salt Lake City. Hex Maniac being out of the format seems like a very big plus for it. I think one of the biggest problems with it previously is that on turn 1 your opponent could just go Hex Maniac and then you're basically guaranteed to lose the next turn. That's not an option anymore. So I don't know. Does Sylveon have a shot currently in Expanded? Danny, why don't you give us your opinions on Sylveon?
I think Sylveon's a better deck in Expanded right now than it is in Standard right now, which is saying something because Sylveon's pretty good in Standard. Okay. It probably is one of the best abusers of the Lucamine engine because you can just grab 3 cards afterwards, any 3 cards out of your deck. So even though you're using your supporter as Lucamine for the turn, you're still able to cover your bases, so that's pretty strong. And that combo is just, really going to carry the deck for right now. It's one of those decks that might get nerfed by the loss of Puzzle, because Puzzle let you grab out certain resources immediately, and that was pretty important. But it might also just be one of those decks that the bans helped with the loss of like turn 1 Hex just knocking you completely out of the game. So Sylveon being able to guarantee that it plays its game 1s now, of course, besides whiffing energy turn 1, I think it could actually be a pretty good deck.
Okay. Either of you guys have anything you want to add, Rahul or Peter? All right. No. So next one, I think another deck that, similarly to Archie's Blastoise, got a little bit of talk right after the announcement of the bans, a deck that hasn't really been playable for the past, few months at least. Definitely seems like it has a chance now. Is going to be Turbo Turtles, Volcanion. We just lost Rahul, who I was going to have talk about this one. So I guess we can. I guess we can kick it to Peter. Peter, what are your thoughts? Maybe if we get him back. Rahul is just having the best time tonight. Maybe while we wait on him. Okay, there we go.
Sorry,
you're good. Turtles / Volcanion, either one.
Turtles.
What do you think?
Very good. As long as I think Turtles very good. Garb, biggest problem. That's it.
That's all we got to say.
Water, big problem too. Archie's. I don't know. How to beat Archie's?
Well, it looks like he's all frozen to give us an answer. So. Okay. Moving on. I guess, similarly to Water, we've got Glaceon Barbaracle, a deck that did well at Salt Lake, and I think the tournament before that as well. I think was kind of the main tournament that it did well at and Expanded. But Peter, what are your thoughts on Glaceon? Do you still see it with Barbaracle? Do you see it at all?
Could you remind me what
think?
Barbaracle does again?
Barbaracle is a stage 1, and if you have a stadium in play, your opponent can't attach special energy.
Okay. I was gonna say that Buzz Lycan just destroys that deck, but the Barnacle seems pretty good. But they can replace the stadium, right? So
yeah.
I don't know. Maybe you could play Glaceon with what's it called? the Stadium that searches out water or fighting Pokemon, so they can't replace it because that's probably what the only stadium they play.
Mm-hmm.
Brooklet Hill. So if
Yeah.
I don't know, might beat Buzzwole now that I think of it, but I'm just not a big fan of that deck. It's just damage output's not very good.
Sure.
Don't expect to play against any.
Yeah, for sure. And for this little section, if you guys have anything you want to add after the main person talks, just feel free to jump right in. I'm not going to stop after every single thing. But okay, next one we saw get second place in Utah. Had a few good placements over there. Didn't really do as well in Roanoke, and that's Gardevoir Gx. So, Danny, what do you think about Gardevoir Gx? Is it solid headed into Portland? Do you think it's a little weak? What do you think?
Guardy's really good. I think any format that a card like Toad or a card like Garb is good, Guardy will be good. If Rayquaza ends up picking up steam and becoming a popular deck, even close to the amount that it is in standard, then Guardy will have a really great matchup there. And it's one of the only cards right now that can say Zork does not have the ability to just one-shot it. So I think that's always really good. The big HP mixed with the Karen, the Toad, and different tech options makes the deck really strong. So
yeah. Okay. Greninja, a deck everyone loves to hate. We're freed from it in standard currently, but it is still existent and expanded. Do you guys expect Greninja to see play in Portland, and do you expect to see it have any level of success? Peter, why don't you talk about Greninja?
The Greninjas are always out there. It's just a matter of if you hit them or not, and if they go Froakie Pass or not. But as a deck, I think it might be decent. I've tested a few games with it. I've never actually pulled the trigger and played Greninja at a single tournament ever since it came out. Shadow Stitch is a really good attack. The problem is you're a stage 2/3 deck, so consistency is an issue. If you can get a really consistent list and never prized Frogadiers, then you probably make day 2. Don't know if you'll win that. It has won in regionals before. Not sure if he can do it again, but the ban of Hex helps it. They can't just cheese you out of Shadows, your Shurikens again, but we'll have to see. I expect people to play it, though.
Okay. Another deck that seems like it's kind of always around in very small quantities, but it's like, it's always going to be at the tournament, is Groudon. So I would ask, what do you guys think of that currently? Rahul, thoughts on Groudon? Any chance of it doing well in Expanded?
Well, there's going to be like the 3 people who always play it, like Stefan Tobacco,
yeah,
your Joe. Like, they're going to play it, but I don't think like anyone who isn't a diehard Groudon fan is going to play it. Like, no one other than the diehard Groudon fans have ever touched it. 1, because you don't have the access to beaches that you need, and 2, because like no one has the mental fortitude to sit through like 50 minutes of playing Groudon every round.
Sure.
Oh, it might be good.
Shut up.
I don't know. Dude, it has Wob. Wob is good. Ability Lock is good.
Yeah.
You lose to Buzzwole every time.
Do you lose to Buzzwole? I don't know. You have Psychic Mr. Mime, bro.
They just pull up the mime and they start they just kill it. They go
Bring him back, bro. Bring him back.
Guzma Mime Lycanroc game.
Oh yeah, I guess they have Lycanroc.
Never
which
mind.
Lets you just bring up the
win this
Groudon.
argument.
I played against Groudon in Utah. I was like, what do I do? And I was like, oh wait, he just benched something like a Guzma.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's really bad. Groudon's bad.
No, Peter's opinion of Groudon just went from very high to very low very quickly.
Ooh, that Lycanroc combo is dirty. No Groudons. There'll be like 2 Groudons at this event, and we know both of them already, so just avoid them.
Yeah, there you go. Another, kind of niche deck. It's seen a little bit of play here and there. Maybe has a chance to come back. Don Fan, what do you guys think? We see any Don fans do well in Portland? Danny, you got thoughts?
I mean, I played Don Fan in Salt Lake, and it was like kind of bad. Like the Zork matchup. the Zoroark matchup was supposed to be like the deck's like main good matchup, and my rationale for playing the deck was, well, if I auto win Zoroark, I'll play it, but if I take any worse than a 90-10 to Zoroark, I don't want to touch the deck.
Mhm.
So I went into the event thinking it auto won Zoroark, and it's close to 50-50 still after playing through Salt Lake. And then my day 2 was atrocious. So I mean, I would recommend probably if you want to play Groudon, you should definitely update it with things like Groudon, Donphan.
Yeah,
You should update it with things like Baby Buzz. You should maybe potentially put in the new Donphan that was just printed in Celestial Storm. So there's a couple new toys that it has, but it's just a bad deck, especially now that Zoroark's running Garb instead of Hex. They can Guzma up your Donphan and shut off your Sudowoodo at the same time now. So that matchup like plummets. So it's probably not even favored for Donphan anymore. So what's the appeal?
Curious, what's the new Donphan from Celestial Storm do?
I have no idea.
I remember as well reading it and being like, oh, this card is like okay, but I don't remember exactly what it does. So okay, we can move on from that then. And well, another deck that we saw have a little bit of success in Utah, got top 8 in Utah. Another day 2 as well is just like a straight Lucario deck, like Lucario Octillery with Focus Sashes, Karina, maybe those type of things. I don't know, Peter, you're shaking your head, so I guess we'll kick it over to Rahul. Rahul, what do you think of Lucario in Expanded?
I think it's just like way too one-trick pony. You just guard block them, and they lose like their entire deck's draw engine, and then you just kill the Rylus, and it's game over. I played against 2 of them in Salt Lake, and they were both the easiest matchups of my life.
Okay. All right, and one more deck to talk about. I think this will probably round it out, and then I'll give you guys a chance if there's anything random, obscure out there we haven't talked about. You guys can bring it up. But the last one I want to bring up is just Toad variants. There was 2 just like straight Toad decks with like Hoopa, Shaman, Draw Engine that got top 32 in Roanoke. I believe a Toad Garb got top 8 in. Maybe it wasn't in Utah, maybe the one before that.
Costa Mesa.
Yeah, Costa Mesa, okay. So Toad Garb, straight Toad. What do you guys think of Seismitoad right now in Expanded? We'll let Peter talk about it.
Well, I think it's the better item lock choice than Trevenant. Not too sure if it's that great. Righteous Edge is a big problem for the deck.
Yeah.
I don't know if they ran puzzles. I think the Seismitoad Giratina deck might have ran puzzles a while ago to recycle their energies because they ran only specials. But I don't know if the Toad Garb versions run, but they do have access to both Garbs with Rainbow Energies, or if you want to play basics too. So it's one of those decks that can still reliably cheese your opponent. They have the Laser Band combo. They have Rock Guard if they want to play that. Acerola to reset the Toad. So I think the one problem that deck might face is just like strong starts from these big hitters with Energy Excel, like Rayquaza or some kind of Eels deck or something.
Okay. All right. So from there, that's all the decks that I had down that I wanted to talk about. Is there anything else out there? Like, there's just, Expanded is such a wide format. There's so many possible things out there. So is there anything else we haven't talked about that you guys think could have a chance? Maybe something you might see a copy of this deck sneak into day 2. Anyone got anything else to add?
Maybe Turbo Dark.
Okay.
Turbo Dark's a super consistent deck. Big problem it has is fighting weakness.
Yeah.
If you can find a way to make even Buzzwole 50-50, I think you'll have a good day with it.
Okay.
I think if we learned anything from Roanoke, it's that people aren't afraid to bring out the Chaos Wheels. So you should probably be packing a Ranger if you're playing a DCE deck, because you don't want to lose to a Tina EX and you don't want to lose to a Miss Magius. And I think Miss Magius is just a good concept in general. Probably even with like Banette GX or something. So it has different partners it can work with right now, and that definitely means that you might see it. So there's absolutely no reason not to play like Ranger, maybe Karen, and things like that. So definitely be prepared for those kind of decks.
Okay, Rahul. Nope.
I got nothing.
All right. One last thing before we close it out. Danny already kind of hit on a few of these things just in that last little spiel, but I wanted to kind of go around and talk about some of the various like techs that we've seen come up and expanded. You know, there's so many different decks out there, there's so many different techs for different matchups. So I just want everyone. I'll throw a specific tech card out there, and you guys can give us the thumbs up or thumbs down if you think it's a good inclusion for or a thumbs in the middle maybe if you're a whole for if you think it's a good inclusion heading into Portland. So Pokemon Ranger, one Danny could just kind of brought up. Do you guys think Pokemon Ranger is good index headed in, or do you think it's unnecessary? Okay, thumbs up. And
I hate
Pokemon
downs. Ranger.
Every time I've played it, I've regretted it.
Okay.
Same. Every time.
Okay.
And when I don't play it, I'm like, maybe I should have played it, and then I fall into the trap again and play it, and then it's always bad.
Next one, Giratina Promo for things like Greninja and Trevenant. Do you think Giratina Promo is one we should see people play? All three across the board, thumbs down. Anyone want to say anything about that?
I mean, the only reason to play it is if you think you're going to play more than one of the break stuff, and very unlikely you will.
Yeah.
If I doubt you'll play against any.
I think Cena, who's one of the biggest Trev players, kind of put it best on a random comment in Heyfonte, where he said that like you're not even like guaranteeing that Trev becomes like Greninja is probably countering Tina right now, and then you're not even guaranteeing that you're able to beat Trev with the Tina promo. So like what is it actually doing? It's like maybe upping your Trev matchup and your Ninja matchups by like 10% each. So I mean, you have to hit that deck, and you actually have to find use in the Tina. So it's definitely like one of the techs that's not worth having.
And you have to find it before getting item locked in the trap matchup.
Sure. Okay. Next up, I guess there's two techs kind of in this same category for the Battle Compressor decks, i.e. Night March and Vespiquen, Karen and or Oricorio. You see yourself playing one, both? What do you guys think? We can kind of just go around the circle, I guess, for this one. Rahul's in the middle, so he's playing one and not playing the other.
It depends on the deck.
Okay.
Because like certain decks benefit heavily from having Karen to recycle your Pokemon now that we don't have puzzles anymore.
Okay.
Like Zoroark, but and certain decks like the spread decks could benefit from having the Oricorio, but like a lot of the time, like if your deck doesn't have a dual purpose for the card, I don't think it's needed.
Okay. Peter.
There's only one deck in existence that needs Karen, and it's questionable if it needs it or not. It's Mega Gardevoir. Every other deck, if you want to counter Night March, you should be playing Oricorio. I personally wouldn't play either to try to counter it. Contrary to popular belief, Night March is never popular. You're never going to hit it. I think out of maybe 5 to 7 regionals where I've played Night March, I've played the mirror like 3 times in the total, every round combined. So
yeah.
It's just not a popular deck. You just never hit Night March. So if you want to be prepared, just learn the matchup. I think you'll get more percentage points in your favor by just learning the matchup and do better that way.
And Danny, thoughts on those two techs?
I mean, I want to say thumbs up to the Oricorio because I think it has more use outside of just the Night March and Vespiquen matchups where, like, even Zoroark is a deck where they end up finding a lot of Pokemon in the discard pile. And expanded in general with Battle Compressor decks by nature, more likely to have more Pokemon in the discard pile. So Oricorio could actually provide something else where it even is a good attacker in the Buzz matchup. Whereas Karen is kind of like in the same boat as Ranger where, like, it's a specific supporter tech that you're using for this one matchup. You have to not prize it for it to have like full value, and even then they could potentially just like hit the nuts and just double compressor and still be night marching for like 180 plus on the next turn anyways. So definitely thumbs up to Oricorio, thumbs down to Karen.
Okay. And then last one, I guess, that I have to bring up, I'll give you guys a chance if there's any other random techs out there people should be considering for just the general meta, would be Oranguru and or Bunnelby Primal Clash. You think one of these two cards would be needed to counter just mill stall decks in general? If so, which one? And, what do you guys think? Rahul, thumbs up? What do you think?
I like Bunnelby a lot, especially in this format. I think Bunnelby has like a lot of use, and it's like it can be super aggressive too if like you're up against a deck that's like not doing anything or they're having a bad start. You can just be like mill two, like go. Like we don't have puzzles anymore. Like what are you gonna do? Like oh that's a VS Seeker, cool. Now you have one less supporter for the game. Like
So
you can be so aggressive with them.
You like Bunnelby over a Rangaroo then?
Yeah, I like Bunnelby way more. Like Bunnelby has always been a card that I've been drawn to, and like I think being able to throw any 2 cards back to is like really good, and like it also shuffles up your deck as opposed to like just putting it at the bottom. So like you're not forced to like have a shuffle draw a supporter to find it next turn.
Okay, Peter.
I'm very anti putting cards in my deck that just like serve one single purpose of like trying to beat mill decks. So I wouldn't be playing either of those cards. I'm not too sure Bunnelby like beats Sylveon. They can just kill your Bunnelby, and Sylveon's the most popular mill deck you probably play against. So, I don't know. I just would roll the dice and not play either. But if I had to choose one, I'd probably just play the Oranguru. Just gets more cards back, more HP. Sylveon don't one shot you.
Yeah, and Danny.
So I think it depends on your draw engine. If you're capable of consistently grabbing the cards out that you put back in with Guru, then by all means you should probably be playing the Guru because it's going to get you more value of 3 cards. Where Bunnelby on average, I could see you shuffling in 1 card, milling 1 card, so it's plussing you 1 card instead of 3. But Bunnelby's better in most decks because they don't have something like Zoric has, like a consistent draw engine to the point that every single turn they can keep grabbing out the cards that they Guru back. So Bunnelby's probably better just because it does close to the same thing. But there are 2 things different about it. The first thing would be that you actively mill your opponent, so like Rahul said, you can apply pressure with the Bunnelby. And the other thing is that you're shuffling your deck, which Rahul also mentioned, which is just good because if you can't see that many cards, at least have the card be active within your deck instead of on the bottom.
Yeah.
Guaranteed, so.
So you gave it a thumbs up then? You think Bunnelby might be a good inclusion?
So thumbs up for Bunnelby in decks that can't draw anything.
Okay. Like you think
thumbs
it's worth
up for
playing at the
Guru
tournament?
in other decks. I think you should play a Bunnelby or a Guru. Yeah.
Okay.
You definitely should.
Okay. Cool deal. Any other random techs out there people should be considering heading into Portland Regionals?
Sudowoodo.
Tapu Koko. Promo.
Coco. Okay.
Flying Flip?
Flying Flip. Looking at you, Rahul.
Flying Flip.
Cool deal.
I got nothing else.
All right, well, I appreciate you guys' time this evening to sit down and do this discussion. I hope it was informative to those of you who are going to be going to Portland Regionals, so I hope everyone does well. I unfortunately will not be there, but all 3 of these guys will be, so good luck to all 3 of you. Wish you all the best. So I'll give you guys a chance here as we close things out. If you've got any shout-outs, social media plugs, anything like that you guys want to do, feel free. The floor is yours, and we'll go in the same order we started the whole video in. Peter, Rahul, then Danny.
Cool. Follow me on Twitter at Peter Joltik. Shoutouts to my sponsor, Top 4 Tier Gaming, and shout out to you for having me on this video.
Absolutely, man. Rahul?
Follow me on Twitter at the Flea THEFL4Es. Shout out to my sponsor ARG and Monster Binder Protectors. And thank you for having me as usual.
Yeah, absolutely. And Danny?
Just want to say thanks for having me on here. I'm a first timer on Trainer Chip channel, so that's pretty cool, I believe. And then shout out to Deadjaw Gaming, my sponsor. Make sure to check out their channel as well, Team DDG, and then just Deadjaw Gaming. And then follow me on Twitter at DAXPTCG.
Cool deal. Thank you guys all for doing this. And guys, if you enjoyed, definitely be sure to leave a like down below if you did, and subscribe to see more videos, as well as follow these guys on their Twitters. They'll be all linked in the description, so feel free to check out all the stuff that they mentioned tonight. So good luck to everyone in Portland. Thanks for doing this, guys, and we're going to get out of here. Until next time, take care.